This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Shaun, but the real star of today's show is an upgrade for a couple of the Fanatec wheel rims by a company called Creosim. Now, if you don't know them, Creosim is a small company out of Denmark. They are known for making some high-end components and upgrades for sim racing products. They currently have a handful of products like a sequential shifter, paddle shifter adapters for Logitech wheels, and the MPS-15 paddle shifter upgrade for the Fanatec Universal Hub or for the Formula Rim, which we're going to be testing it on today. The paddle shifters could also be used on a DIY project or any kind of custom wheel that you're trying to put together. Now, it was only a couple of weeks ago that I was testing out the RaceCore 24 brake mod for the Fanatec pedals. I was marveling at the level that Fanatec had achieved by having other companies respect their products enough to make upgrades for them that can cost a pretty penny, and the Creosim paddle shifter upgrade falls right into that category as well. So what are these shifters all about? I mean, what makes them different or even better than the stock shifter supplied on a Fanatec wheel rim? The Creosim MPS-15 shifters are a magnetic snap type shifter. This creates a more reliable and an easier to detect shift point, and most importantly, a shifter paddle with more feedback to the driver to alert them of the exact shift moment. Now that sounds great, but what does it actually mean? What is the real difference between that and a stock shifter? Well, a stock shifter is basically a lever that has a spring giving tension, and at some point in its throw, it's going to connect with a button, and that's going to engage the shift point. In the case of the Creosim MPS-15 shifters, it's entirely different. That magnetic switch is the release point. The moment that you give enough pressure to break that magnetic connection, you have made the shift. The problem with a standard paddle shifter is sometimes you might find yourself pulling down but not far enough to engage the button and actually get a positive shift. Creosim actually calls this ghost shifting, and it's happened to me many a times. The other problem with the standard shifter is the tactile feedback. What you feel at the end, what engages finally, is really just a button, and the sensation you get is how strong is the button itself. Now with the Creosim and that magnetic snap, you know the moment. You have to pull hard enough to make it click, and it doesn't shift until that moment. There cannot be any kind of ghost shifting at all unless your finger didn't pull the lever. If you pulled it enough to move, then you broke the connection and the shift was made. You never have any doubt whatsoever whether it shifted or didn't shift. You know because it moved, you know because it clicked, and you got that positive tactile feedback, and that is very reassuring. Now the Creosim paddle shifters, the MPS-15, are going to set you back €111 including VAT, or about $120 here in the USA. When you receive the Creosim paddle shifters, they come nicely packaged in a box with foam, and that keeps everything organized and prevents any scratches or damage to any of the parts. Inside the package, you will find a left and right pre-built shifter assembly intended for the Formula rims. Then there's a set of extenders and a longer curved set of paddle shifters intended for a round wheel, along with a small bag of installation hardware. The shifters are essentially a DIY kit, and you will have to install them yourself, which is covered in a video at their website. It's also covered in their manual at their website, and it's also covered in this video because we're going to go ahead and install them now, and I'll be adding them to my Formula rim. The installation is not hard to do, but there are a few areas to take great care. We start by removing the lower back cover of the F1 rim. This is done by removing the two lower screws on the face of the wheel. This cover just drops out of position. We then need to remove the plug for each shifter on the bottom of the Fanatec's internal circuit board. It is best to use a pair of needle nose pliers and pull the housing or plug. Do not pull the wires. Then it's time to remove the shifter units themselves. I found that the paddle extensions were slightly in my way, so I went ahead and removed them first with their Allen bolts. And then on the side of the shifter there are two holes. Well inside of each hole is a small Allen bolt that holds the shifter in place. These bolts do have Loctite on them and will take a little strength to break loose. Remove these bolts and then the shifter assembly can be removed, carefully pulling the wire out of the wheel rim, and then repeat these steps on the opposite side. After both shifters are removed, it is time to put things back together with our new Creosim magnetic shifters. When you look at the shifter, you can see a slight angled tab making the paddle extend more one way than the other. We want this tab facing downward for the proper orientation. When we install them, we use the hardware provided by Creosim. It will be 2 of the long bolts with 2 washers per shifter. We put the bolts through the side holes and then thread them into the existing holes on the wheel rim where the old shifters were installed. It is very important to take your time during this particular moment. My bolts had a little bit of Loctite still in the threads and they didn't want to go in perfectly smooth. But whatever you do not want to cross thread these threads. That will completely mess up your wheel and you don't want to do that. Take your time, make sure it's clean. I actually even used a little bit of grease to clean things up, make sure the threads look nice, and then I took my time getting them in, and when I was happy, I snugged them down. But whatever you do not over tighten these bolts either. Again, it's aluminum threads we're screwing into. We can then fish the wiring into the wheel and then carefully plug the plug into the board. I once again used a pair of pliers to make sure I got it straight and all the way in. Now that I had a stock shifter on one side and a Creosim installed on the other side, I wanted to go ahead and take a look at the differences while they're mounted on the wheel at the same time. On the visual side of things, they are very close in design and shape, with the biggest difference being that the Creosim shifters are silver in color versus the black of the Fanatec. Despite looking similar, their action is completely different. With the stock shifter, we can see the paddle move quite a bit before the shifter button is clicked or engaged. And I would say that it is light to the touch and takes very little pressure to move the paddle shifter. The Creosim, on the other hand, does not move at first touch. It is tight. It is sprung like a trigger on a gun. The moment you press it, it fully releases the magnet, and with a very positive click, the shift would have been completed. It takes a good amount of pressure, but nothing so strong to be difficult. Now we can put the opposite side shifter on and repeat all the same steps to remove and install the new shifter assembly. When both shifters are installed and both wires have been plugged in, we can then put the bottom back cover back on. I also played around and installed the paddle extensions onto the shifter arms. This would make the formula paddles just a little bit bigger, and you certainly don't have to do it. I had a little trouble getting the little tiny threads of the screws to start off properly, but after a little tenacity and a lot of patience, I did finally get them straight and tightened down all the way. This is also how you'd add the curved paddle shifters if they were desired. Our wheel is now back to functional, and it can be installed onto our wheelbase for some driving. These shifters are a direct replacement, so there is no extra tuning or calibration necessary. They are ready to go. And when you first start driving with the Creosim MPS-15 paddle shifter upgrade, you will be blown away. There is a huge difference between these and stock paddle shifters. This is not a subtle upgrade, and it will completely change the shifting in your wheel. What used to be a soft moving paddle with a bit of travel prior to engaging the button is now a major click with an instantaneous shift. Despite feeling the shifters in my hands prior to driving, I have to admit that when on track, it first caught me off guard. Wow, I really have to shift different and with intention. No more lazy click, click, click until I get the gear. If I want a gear change, I must pull the shifter hard enough to make it move. And when it does, it's already over and the car has already shifted the gear. I cannot state enough just how different this feels. It is literally impossible to accidentally shift because of the strength, and it is impossible not to know that you have shifted. No miss shifts whatsoever. Now, the shifters cannot override a car that doesn't want to downshift, so technically you can still miss a shift, but it will never be by accident or by an unintentional pull of your shifter. I will say this, I never had a single complaint about the stock shifters on my Fanatec wheel rim. However, the Creosim MPS-15, well, they took this wheel to a different level. It made it feel like a pro wheel just by the difference in shifting. Again, not a prior complaint, but this is a huge difference. Having such strong tactile feedback of the shift makes it easier to know that the shift was made. And that will raise your confidence with each and every lap. Whether you were upshifting up through the gears or quickly downshifting back through them, you knew every time you had shifted the paddle. It was unmistakable. And one thing I do want to mention, and this does come down to personal preference, these are adjustable in tension. There are 3 holes on the back, the outside holes being the strongest, the inboard holes being a little bit lighter in tension. It's not that much lighter. It is a difference, but it's not a huge difference. It's still going to give you that super positive click, and that's what it's really all about. So in case you didn't figure it out from all my descriptions, let's go ahead and break things down with the good, the not so good, and the bottom line, starting off with the good, and that is that extremely positive click. Instant shift. No ghost shifts. Pro feel to them. Heavy duty, long lasting. No cutting or drilling to install. Adjustable release tension. And direct replacement, no calibration necessary. And now on to the not so good, and you probably could have predicted the first one because it seems to be a common trend in the high-end components, and that is that they are an expensive upgrade. DIY install of a medium level. Probably not good for the warranty with Fanatec if there's ever a problem. And the silver color does not match the black finish of the stock wheel. And now on to the bottom line. Do you really need these? And I guess that really comes down to 2 different things. Do you occasionally misshift? In my case, I had 2 different scenarios of my misshifts. Number 1, where I'd start to predict the shift, start to pull down on the paddle and unexpectedly get a click at some moment, or turn the wheel and cause myself to shift unexpectedly. And the other scenario being that classic ghost shift, where I actually wouldn't pull far enough and I wouldn't get my shift. In the case of the MPS-15, you know you got the shift every single time. And the other reason would be that you want your shifters to provide a more positive tactile feedback. And again, the Creosim MPS-15 certainly do that. You can hear it, you can feel it, and it's instant. So then it really comes down to the price of the upgrade. And in the case of the formula rim, you're talking about a rim that costs $180, an upgrade that costs $120. That's 2/3 the value of the rim itself. But when you talk about the Xbox One compatible universal hub at $299 plus an aftermarket wheel of sorts, well, now it's a 40% cost of the upgrade, and then you'd also get the Xbox One compatibility, which is nice. Now, there's no mistaking the difference between a stock shifter and these shifter and what they feel like on the wheel rim. The new ones really change the way the wheel feels and the car drives when shifting. All for the better, but there was a slight learning curve, more in the form of surprise than taking much time. But again, I don't recall having a complaint about the stock ones. So if you are happy with your formula rim, but you want more of a pro feeling to the shifts, well, that's the whole reason why these paddle shifters were made. On the other hand, if you're happy with your formula rim, but you don't have a complaint in the world about the way they shift, well, then why fix what ain't broken? So I hope you've enjoyed this review of the MPS-15 paddle shifter upgrade by Creosim. And even if you don't have Fanatec gear, it's great to see more and more companies pushing the limits and supplying us with like pro real type gear for sim racing. Thank you, Creosim, for that. This is the Simpit. I'm Shaun Cole, and I'll see you on the track.